All right, hello, welcome to Computer Science 20S Liberty Basic. This is Unit 2. Yay, more fun. We're going to start off with looking at strings. So far, the only kind of variables we've used are for holding number values. We've only been able to deal with numerical values, so now we're going to look at what we call strings. There are special variables for holding words, other non-numeric character combinations. These variables are called string variables. They hold strings of characters, and these characters can be generally letters, letters of the alphabet. They could actually be the digits 0 to 9, so there could be a number that looks like a string, and they could be other symbols like commas and periods and less thans and greater thans and question marks and at symbols and all those kind of things. All of those are what we call characters, and they can make up strings. So let's look at a very simple program using strings. This two-line program asks you for your name. Once you've typed it and press enter, it responds back to you. So we would have an input. Notice that we've got these quotations once again in our input. Remember, we have to have a semicolon here, and then we're going to use the variable, and you'll notice that the variable has a $ after it. So it says input, please type your name, and then the variable name is your name string. That's how you say that. And then you say print, it's nice to meet you, your name string. And so what it's going to actually do is it's going to print back to you whatever your name is. So in BASIC, when you want to store characters in a variable, you end the variable name with a string, or with a $. Sorry, it makes it a string variable. If you don't put the $, then it's strictly a numerical value, and you can't type in letters. As you can see from our program example, you can both input and print with string variables, as we did earlier with our non-string and numeric variables as well. So you can print strings, you can input strings, that kind of thing. You've actually been using strings all along, even before the section about string variables. Whenever you saw a basic program line with words in quotation marks, for example, when you said something like print, it's nice to meet you, inside the quotation marks, you were looking at what we call a string literal. So it's not a string variable. A string variable is a variable that could hold a string. A string literal is simply a string that is defined, like it's nice to meet you. It doesn't change, it doesn't vary, it's just what it is. A string literal always starts with a quotation mark and always ends with a quotation mark, just like this, the double one. Because of this, no quotation marks are allowed in between the starting and ending quotation marks. In other words, you cannot put quotation marks inside string literals, and you can't actually print quotation marks, which can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. There is a way around it, but it's really not too needed for anything, so we're just going to not worry about it. So for example here, the quoted characters are a string literal. So when I say print, I am a string literal, that is a string literal. When I say my name string equals Joe Smith in quotation marks, this is a string literal here, the Joe Smith part. My name string is the string variable. And now the string variable contains Joe Smith. So if I print my name, then I get Joe Smith without the quotation marks, by the way. You should note that a string can have 0 characters. Such a string is often called an empty or null string. If it has nothing in it, then it's called the empty or null string. And in BASIC and most other languages, an empty string can be expressed in a string literal as 2 quotation marks without any characters between them, just like this. Okay, that's the symbol for empty string. It's got nothing in between them. So what can you do with strings? Well, you can manipulate them just as you can manipulate numbers in a computer programming language by adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and other things too, I suppose. You can also manipulate strings. You can do things to them. And adding strings is the most common. And we have a special word when we add strings. It's called concatenate. To concatenate strings means to string them together, to add them together. So for example, like input, what is your first name string, input what is your last name string, full name string, you add them together. So we would go first name string plus, and then we'd put a string literal with a space in there, and that would be just a spacer. So first name string plus the space plus last name string, and you would get the full name string. This is referred to as concatenation when you add strings together. We can compare strings with each other just as you can compare numbers. This means that you can use the if-then statement and the equals. You can use the not equal to, the less than, the greater than, the less than or equal to, the greater than or equal to, all of those things, okay? So if A string is equal to B string, that means that they are equal. If it's not equal, okay, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Actually, I'm not sure if you can go less than or equal to. For sure you can go less than or equal to, or less than, and for sure you can go greater than. You might wonder what that means. Well, it has to do with alphabetizing. When comparing strings, a string is considered to be equal to another string when all the characters in one string are exactly the same in both strings. This means that even if they both print exactly the same on the screen, they can still be unequal if one has an invisible space on the end and the other one doesn't. So they must be exactly the same. And if you think about computer passwords, think about all caps or not. If your password is PASSWORD, which is a really bad password, by the way, that is not equal to capital P and then password. Those are not equal. They must be identical, just like a password. Some passwords could contain spaces. Not many can, but some could. Okay, so for example here, when the line A string equals B string is performed, the result is to print not the same since there's a hidden space at the end of B string. So if A string is hello and B string is hello, but you'll notice that there is a space right here, then they are not equal. They're not going to be equal. They must be exactly identical. If it was like this with no space, that would also not be identical. Or if it was like this, that would also be not identical. They must be exactly identical. There are several string commands as well. The len function counts the number of characters in a string. The expression inside the parenthesis must either be a string literal or a string variable, so you can see how long someone's name is. For example, if you went len and then used my name, if you said num equals the len of Bennett, then that would equal BENNET. Num would equal 6 because there's 6 letters in my name. The result returned as a number can be used in any mathematical expression. So you could check to see who has a longer name. You could check to see if a password, some passwords are required to be at least 8 characters long. You could check that if it's long enough or if it's not long enough. You can check to see if it contains capitals. You can check to see if it contains lowercase or numbers or any of those type of things. Lots of different things you can do with string functions. Liberty Basic has other string functions as well. There's trim string, word string. Trim string chops off blank spaces. Word string actually takes words out of sentences. Like if you had the sentence, the dog is bad, because most dogs are bad. Well, let's make them good. Right? If you take word string of that long sentence, comma 3, you're going to get the word is, because it's the third word. So there's lots of different things that you can do with strings. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on them. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take some time now and add to your Blackjack project. Ask the player's name. You'll have to use an input for that, and use that name later in the program. And I'd also like you to change the hit or stand part so that the user enters the words hit or stand, actually types them in. It could be capitals, all caps, or it could be all lowercase, or it can just be the letters H or S too. Okay, so go ahead and take some time, add that to your Blackjack project. And then we'll move on to the next lesson.